Hi, welcome. So, welcome here. This is our DEPT Talks Live. I am Bart Manuel. I'm co-founder of DEPT, and today I'm also part-time homeschool teacher. Actually, my wife is doing 99% of the work, but I'm I'm trying to contribute also a little bit. First of all, warm welcome to all the DEPTers out there that are watching. Please, everyone, stay healthy, stay strong, and keep on focusing on making the great work for our clients. And I would like to thank you very much. Of course, this also extends to our clients and friends and everybody. Let's all keep the wheels in motion, and let's all, so as good as we can, so we come out strong on the other side. Okay. Now, as you know, we at DEPT, we love to organize events, big and small. The small roundtables, but also the big festival we do every year. We do that because we love to bring together the people in the creative community, in the tech community, and celebrate, share knowledge, and just connect to each other. Now, this week, we decided to continue to do this, just in a way that suits the current situation better. From today, we will be hosting a DEPT Talk Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Central European Time. I'm really happy to see you guys have all joined. Today, we start a series about a key topic, which is how to make your digital teams work and work remote. Couldn't be more appropriate, I think. At DEPT, we are involved in many digital teams with our clients, and we have learned over the years how to build and run digital teams. Today, we want to share our best practices, and we want to focus on how to organize teams and work remote. We will try to share ways of working, the tools we use, the processes, culture, etc. Try to spice it up with examples. I hope you guys will find it useful. Feel free to ask questions through the Q&A. There is a comment section on the page. If there's any at the end of the presentation, I will turn to the Q&A and try to answer a couple of questions. I hope there will be some good stuff in there. So let's go for now. There we go. Now, the first topic is quite an obvious one, we think. It is simple to perfect your tooling. Literally everyone we know is today scrambling to get their Teams, their Hangouts, their Zooms, their Slack, etc. working. It is actually quite refreshing to see that everything that seemed impossible for such a long time, or people that were reluctant to set this up or use it, is now done in just 1 week. We can do great things. I consider that progress. A call to all leaders: set the tone. Make sure you are visible, literally at all times, and work from a proper desk as possible. That's just the beginning. It's not only about video conferencing. We think that complex collaboration processes like building apps, software, portals, e-commerce, like building actual stuff, require safety nets. Safety nets are the things that enable people to make mistakes and to move fast. And safety net is a proper infrastructure that guides the way people work and to make sure that when they make mistakes, nothing blows up. Safety nets are provided by automation and integration. Tools like GitLab, Hotjar, Azure DevOps. Now, we even see, and we have been seeing this already for quite some time, a strong move to even no-ops. At the no-ops, you could consider anything where you have collaborative cloud-based IDEs like Visual Studio Live Share connected to Azure DevOps, where you automate the whole flow and the whole software development process behind it. Now, there's a gazillion tools out there. I don't have the time now to orchestrate it all out. I just want to get the message across that setting it up is crucial nowadays. Everything is cloud-based, so the availability is instant. But we know the setup and the integration and making it all work is a different story and requires a lot of effort. Fortunately, there are many specialists out there with the templates and best practices on how to set it up. Reach out to them right now, make it simple, make it practical, and get it to work. It doesn't need to be perfect. Now, obviously, many organizations have been talking about setting up this stuff and making sure to do it, but there's always been reasons not to do it, whether there were time constraints or budget constraints or anything. Now is a good time to repay that technical debt. Don't hesitate anymore, just get it done. There's another thing. We see a lot of traditional organizations with a more closed enterprise and on-premise approach that might be at a little bit of a disadvantage right now. And they need to consider how to make the move, but still stay secure. The good news is that it is possible to enforce technologies like cross-service single sign-on, typically best with G Suite accounts, two-factor authentication, SSL everywhere, and stay relatively secure. Now, obviously, we think it's always a trade-off, but it can beat the process of having copies of files on individual unmanaged laptops. So it is obviously, we think, the better choice. Second thing I wanted to address is syncing up the process. Now, working with remote teams, it's quite a great opportunity in a way. It's like putting a magnifying glass on your current software development process. If you have a poor documentation, poor knowledge sharing, inconsistent or inefficient meetings, or an inflexible continuous integration and continuous delivery platform, now's the time that you find it out. Now, if you're going to move to the new platform, if you want to improve your processes, there's one thing to keep in mind. Make sure that you create a data-driven process, because velocity and story points, the typical metrics that guide agile delivery processes, tell only part of the story. Basically, they're a proxy for what is really happening. You can get much more detailed insight from analyzing GitLab, GitHub, Jira, Slack, all the other tools that your team uses. For example, you could be automatically answering the following questions. Who's having the most impact and what part of the project? Is only one coder owning most of the code? Because that could be a risk, especially in these days. What skills are actually present on our team? Who's doing what? And who has experience in which tools, libraries, frameworks, etc. It's all very visible in the platforms you use. And you just need to reap the data. So another key metrics is how quick you can onboard people into your processes. In these times, it's always good to be able to rotate teams fast. Now, if a new person comes in, at best, you want him or her to be able to deliver meaningful stuff at the end of the same day. Now, that might be a little bit too hopeful, but it is a key metric to track. So tracking how fast new hires are contributing is a good way to identify the quality of your processes. Also, if you re-platform some of your tooling, you can measure if there's an actual improvement done by this retooling. Now, another topic is standardization. We believe there is no best solution. And there's a lot of opinions out there always on which specific tools is superior to other tools, and these can become culture wars. What we think is you need to be really pragmatic. For instance, we've chosen at DEPT not to create a single mandatory DEPT way of work, because by the time we would have designed it and launched it and implemented it, it would have been outdated already. What is important is that within each team, you standardize, and then people need to stick to it. And especially because not everyone is in the same room, the discipline on this must be really strict. So lastly, rules of engagement. Simple agreements within your teams on how to work together. Write them down. For example, stuff like, okay, guys, we use Hangouts for meetings, email for complex discussions, and Slack for ad hoc, quick communications. Now, it's not important to use these tools specifically, but it is important that you agree to the rules of engagement and everyone sticks to them. So they might be not your favorite, but if you're in the team, you stick to it. Another quite simple but important rule of engagement: be present in the virtual daily stand-up on time, your cam on, your mic off, and have your contribution prepared so you can deliver that one sentence contribution in 43 seconds. There's no excuse for not having a working mic or camera or whatever. And lastly, and I think this is also one of the most important parts in your processes, is communicating to the stakeholders, to the steercos, to the clients, to whoever is sort of footing the bill. Make your weekly summary. Because normally project updates are also being done very much independently along the way on the tables, etc. But when you're working remotely, having a consistent, timely, complete weekly update delivered to all stakeholders in the same manner in every week is really key to make sure that you're visible. Because visibility is key. If you're not visible, you're dead. Thirdly, talk about building culture. Now, this is maybe the softer side, but hey, not being together can be really estranging. Most people are just not used to it. The stuff that typically happens on the desks, the little chats, leaning into another conversation, you happen to hear the jokes, the birthday celebrations, the shout outs to each other, music, lunch, walks, smokes, weekend war stories. They're all gone. Think of new ways to build it. What we see happening right now, hangout lunches popping up everywhere, just bantering during lunch, Friday drinks online, crazy home workplace deco competitions. I wasn't allowed. Guided tours of your flat, show off your vinyl connection, show off your pets, have your kids make drawings and put them up behind you so people can see them on the webcam. Show off your lunch cooking skills. I think the most important thing is you need to be considerate that there is time for the regular banter, the laughs, but also sharing the concerns and the fears. People just need each other. And one thing that I want to ask of everyone, be mindful of parents with kids at home. Most of them are under tremendous pressure right now. Let's cut them some slack and be mindful and flexible with them, because this might last a little bit longer than we all hope. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Lastly, rethink your goals. Now, in all the programs we run with teams and a lot of clients, big and small, the goals differ widely. There's one thing that we have in common. We're always about the agility, about making sure we perform cross-functional collaboration, and we're able to execute on location-independent work. Because there's always a mix of work at the client headquarters, at the agency's office, with home workers, with freelancers, and nearshore teams. That's always the case. But sometimes we help to build a complete new corporate startup. In that case, you have the freedom to build a whole new organization, which is separate from the mothership. And there's a lot of freedom to set up the modern stack of tools and processes. Way less involvement of compliancy, risk, IT, all this difficult stuff. This is great for launching complete new standalone business, but it does quite little to help the mothership change their ways. Sometimes we set up innovation teams within existing clients. Then the goal is not to only launch a completely new service or user experience, but also to set the example and to guide the way for the rest of the organization, to discover new ways of doing things so the rest of the organization can learn from it later. And sometimes we even fully integrate into existing organizations. At big clients, with the goals to infuse speed, agility, creativity, user-centric design into the whole organization. Now, whatever the goal of this team was, now is a good time to rethink the best value of having this digital team now. Because a couple of weeks ago, the goal might have been to launch a new product or a new service, but the world has changed for a while. Maybe the best value could now be in helping out the rest of the organization becoming virtual and a remote distributed team, to set up their tools and set up their processes and help them out with that. Or launch different products which are now in a more dire need. We see complete businesses completely throwing around their distribution channels or their delivery models, and they need the tools and the processes and the platforms to do that. So these teams might be allocated way better there. Or teams can contribute to society and facilitate the people and the organizations around you. Whatever it is, it's a good time to rethink the goal. So, this wraps it up. I think you should work on all these 4 levels. That should give you the best shot at coming out of this stronger. But before I open up the Q&A, I want to close off with one last thought. Please stay strong, stay positive, trust science and independent journalism. Don't forward, retweet, like, or share any message which you don't know to be true. Thank you. Q&A. I'm going to turn to another screen now and see if something has been coming in. So I see a question has come in. How to build mixed teams of people from client and agency side and even freelance people. What is your take on that? Good question. So mixed teams in my mind, there can be no mixed team. A team is a team with a single goal. So if you want to build a team with people coming from multiple sources, you need to make sure that all the interests are aligned, and you need to make sure that there's no barriers into integrating into one team. And these barriers can be indeed things like tools and processes, but it can also be contracts, liabilities, but also some people that need to stay work at a single office or don't have laptops to work remotely, etc. So I think the most important thing is to make sure that all the barriers are removed for effective collaboration, and then the team cannot be mixed. The team is one team building stuff. I hope it answers the question. I need to explain a little bit. Maybe I cannot go into follow-up questions or really back and forth discussions, because there's actually quite a big lag in the broadcast of this. So before I would have the follow-up question back, there would be another 10, 15 seconds have passed. So I'll just take the questions one by one. So the question is, do you have an example of a digital team that is really working well, and why is it working well? Yeah, I can think of some. I think we are working now at a corporate client. They're a big bank, working on a startup initiative. I think a couple of the reasons why the team is working really well is, first of all, we set expectations really well with everyone involved, from the client, the steercos, the people paying the bills, etc., on how this would go. So that's one thing. The second thing is we spend time with a very limited number of people, setting up the tools, the infrastructure, the processes, and having the first user stories, designs, flows worked out. This might sound a little bit waterfall approach, but before you scale up the team, it is important that, if you add all these people up, that there's clarity for the sort of secondary and further layers on what they're supposed to work from, in which structure they're working, which tooling, how they're going to be reporting, how they're going to see the results of their work, what is going to be the culture of the team. So having a core, set it up early, and just put it down as a given, I think was really, really helpful there. And third of all, I think one of the most important thing is that also from client side, there is a true hands-on involvement within the team. So it's not a mixed team with a client and a supplier. It's just a team with the product owner full on hands-on in the team. So I think those are the things that I could think of are really critical to the high performance of the team. So, other question I see coming in. Do you expect, I might want to look this way, do you expect remote work and remote or hybrid digital teams to increase in popularity? Good question. To be honest, I think after, when this is over, I'm not saying if this is over, when this is over, I'm confident that it will be over. There might be a little bit of a backlash where people actually love to be in the office again and having their colleagues around them and have that social experience that is called work. That's what I think. But I think we are learning an incredible lot these days. I think we're learning we can adapt. We can do things in a week that normally takes a year. And I think we are going to be amazed how productive we can be. Now, that being said, I will expect a little bit of a backlash because emotionally, it is really hard for people. So I think there will be a little bit of a wave, so a counter wave, but then, we've put the tools in place. We've made a giant leap, and I have no doubt in my mind that everyone will be reaping the benefits soon after this is over, and we can accelerate like never before. That's my true expectation. Okay. So I have a question here come in from Otterhouse. Some project with a strong social aspect, especially in the public domain. If the contact with target group and stakeholders is difficult, how can you recruit and co-create with them? I need to think on that one. What the question is actually asking. If the contract with the target group and stakeholders is difficult, how can you recruit and co-create with them? Well, let me put it this way. If you do a project or run a program and you create product, whether that's an app or a site or a service or whatever it is, there's always a target audience, right? Whether that's a social target group, difficult to recruit, how do you co-create? I think in my mind, the MVP approach would apply best. And the MVP approach should be focusing on really, really short cycles, putting stuff out there, which will actually get used, and learn from that. If it's difficult to have focus groups, if it's difficult to have user testing, it's difficult to do card sorting with your target audiences, etc. If it's all very anonymous and very far away, then I think making sure the product is out there, is being used, and see and listen and learn to the data, that's probably the best way. I hope I have answered the question correctly. If I haven't understood it, please rephrase it, and maybe we'll come back to it later. Other question. How and where do most of your teams define their user stories? And how and where do most of your teams define their user stories? Good question. Well, typically, I would say this is done in real life presence meetings. That in the good old days. Nowadays, obviously, everyone is learning and adapting. There is a plethora of online tools, and we will be sharing lists of tools after the talk, sending out a deck and with links to valuable tooling. I understand, for instance, Miro.com is gaining a lot of popularity. I don't know if it's specifically being used for creating user stories. That I would really need to check. But the online tooling is out there. The Hangout is now there. That's the way it's done right now. Another question. What's your opinion about more asynchronous communication versus ad hoc discussions through live chat and the impact this might have on distraction and planning? That's a good question. I think we need to be careful not to make each other crazy. That's why I was discussing the rules of engagement. We need to respect that people are working, and just because we cannot see them, we should not call them or interrupt them or message or Slack them all of the time. Because there's already this tremendous load, and before you know it, everyone is only spending their days and hours on Slack and not being productive. And especially for people doing complex, creative, technical work, they need to be able to work uninterrupted in their zones for longer times on end. So respecting the rules of engagement, at least within the teams, on refraining from non-essential messages, from making sure that if things can wait until the team meet or the stand-up, let it wait. Don't always be in the now unless it's actually necessary. Denia Hernandez is asking a question. How to make a remote onboarding process effective? Good question. It's difficult. Obviously, it is becoming more easily once your tools and processes are tip-top. So that's one thing to focus on. Also, if you set up the tools, make sure they're widely used. Everyone knows what they are. If you're using a process like, based on Git flow or whatever sort of standardized processes out there, that's obviously very, very useful because new people coming in will recognize that. Now, that being said, obviously, it's difficult now to onboard and train junior people because typically the on-the-job training requires a lot of personal interaction in real time. So this, to be fair and honest, might not be the best time for that. It's just a reality. That's what I think. Another thing is I think you should, if this is a regular thing, you should measure it and create a feedback loop on it. If you find out that onboarding people consistently takes too long, you need to reevaluate your tools and your processes because it should be a goal to minimize this time. So if it takes longer, do a deep dive and ask why did it take so long? What went wrong? And really drill down into the sort of the core reasons for it. Okay, I think this was it. It was an interesting experience. I want to close off with one slide that I'd like to share. Talking about building culture, this is a screenshot of a corporate ritual at a company of a friend of mine where they do the daily stand-up in the morning, 40 people, all in the same sweater, all with the same virtual background in Zoom. And they are, if you look well, they're shaking each other's hands and then they start the day. And I think these are the sort of things that I think will, make sure that we'll get through this. Thank you very much.